That was breathtaking. SpaceX's Starship Booster 9 undergoes cryo testing. When can we expect the launch? Is the most legendary Starship about to be scrapped? How will Starfactory work? More Starlink V2s spotted, and a Chandrayaan-3 mission update is ready. My name is Felix, welcome to What About It, let's dive right in. Starship updates. This is SpaceX's Starbase. If you love rapid Starship testing and lots of progress, there is no way to not love this place. SpaceX is rapidly closing in on the second Starship launch. You're going to love this. We'll kick things off today at the Orbital Launch Mount, the place where just days ago we saw the placement of the next Super Heavy prototype. The first such event since the groundbreaking inaugural Starship launch. And trust me, this momentous lift was not merely for flexing the muscles of Mechazilla's arms. On July 23rd, Booster 9 underwent a critical cryogenic pressure test. The procedure required filling both the lower liquid oxygen and the upper methane tank to their full capacity with liquid nitrogen, a breathtaking scene to say the least. Impressively, the whole booster was tanked in just 2 hours, during which some phenomenal venting occurred. Upon filling the Super Heavy, it was left in that state for another 2 hours before it was eventually detanked. During the entire fueling operation, there were exactly 0 signs that anything went wrong, meaning that Booster 9 scored another successful test. You might now be wondering why use liquid nitrogen for these tests when it's not the actual propellant used by Starship. That's a stellar question, and here's why. When testing a prototype for the first time, there's always a small risk of the vehicle being destroyed, either due to a manufacturing error or improper fueling procedures. We've seen this happen before. Should a prototype fully loaded with propellant experience a complete system failure, the risk of a catastrophic explosion could potentially wipe out the entire launch tower. Thankfully, with nitrogen, such an event is unlikely. Additionally, testing with nitrogen can also make financial sense, as it's cheaper than methane and not all of it is recovered. However, testing with nitrogen isn't without its drawbacks. When a rocket vents nitrogen, it displaces oxygen, which would pose a significant risk of suffocation if anyone were nearby during testing. Therefore, the road is closed and all workers evacuate the pad during these tests. Moreover, nitrogen is less dense than oxygen, so filling the oxygen tank with nitrogen doesn't achieve the same pressure, leaving a margin of uncertainty. After the test, SpaceX once again astounded us with photographs of both the B9 testing at the OLM and the recent Booster 10 tests at the Massey's test site. Looking forward, we can anticipate spin prime testing, where ultra-cold propellant will traverse the Raptor's installation, albeit without ignition. The day after the tests, an event occurred that checked off another item on our list of prerequisites for initiating full-stack testing. For the first time since its installation, the ship's quick disconnect panel extended. Without this crucial step, fueling the ship would be impossible, making it a key piece of the puzzle. As we celebrate all of this progress, the SpaceX teams are busily working to refurbish the entire orbital section of the launch complex. These wonderful images snapped by our very own Winkopp Maestro Chief reveal that one of the Orbital Launch Mount's legs has received a fresh coat of paint. Recently, some focus has also been directed towards the launch tower itself. The front-facing black panels, which safeguard the Mechazilla's interior during launch, have finally been painted, giving the entire structure a brand new look. At the back, the tower's concrete base was also partially refreshed with paint, and the cover for the drawworks, which looked like Swiss cheese, has now been replaced. It's incredible to think that merely 3 months ago this place was just a large crater with fragments of concrete thrown across the launch site. As you likely know by now, SpaceX has installed a water-cooled steel plate to ensure that we never witness the kind of post-launch devastation ever again. Some time ago, this system underwent its inaugural test. Since that test, the high-pressure system needed to blast water from the plate's holes has been expanded. Following the completion of the pedestals behind the existing pressure vessels, additional tanks were installed there on July 26th. A day earlier, our camera captured another water delivery to the tanks situated behind the tower. This suggests that we should expect another series of water testing in the near future. Perhaps this will be coordinated with the spin prime testing of the booster I mentioned earlier. One thing is clear, the launch complex is gradually reviving with ongoing testing that hopefully concludes with another orbital stack ready for a launch. So when can we expect this to occur? Personally, I do think that there is a possibility of launch readiness by the second week of September. Although we have to remember that the FAA investigation is yet to be concluded, which could potentially be a showstopper. What is your prediction? When will we witness another Starship liftoff? Place your bets in the comments. We've looked at the currently tested prototypes. Now it's time to explore what lies ahead by heading over to the build site, which is a brief 5 minutes journey away from the launch site. Upon arriving at the high bay, we find Ship 29, which is still awaiting its aft flaps. Once equipped, it should be the next in line for testing at Massey's test site, where Ship 28 was transported last week. Furthermore, inside the high bay, the crews have begun assembling the upper section of Ship 30. Outside in the ring yard, we spot the prototype tank S-24.2, which is still being assembled and will serve to test the Starship's payload bay at the Max-Q cage, also situated at Massey's. Lately, a rather fascinating part appeared in the ring yard, a super heavy booster forward dome that's a little unusual. Can you tell what's different about it? That's right, it features a myriad of vertical stringers. Most likely this is a booster hot stage load head, part of the hot staging test tank I've speculated about in the last episode. This test piece would be composed of this forward dome, the hot staging ring also found in the ring yard, and likely a ship aft dome. All these parts would collectively simulate a fully assembled Starship. We're still unsure which ship's aft section will be repurposed for this tank. Some think it will be the single ring of S-26.1, but personally I have a different hypothesis. Following the destruction of Ship 27 at the Rocket Garden, it was subsequently disassembled into smaller segments. One such segment, the aft section, was relocated to the secondary production tent. This is intriguing since typically all the disassembly and cutting operations are performed in the open, as evidenced by the dismantling of Booster 8. That's why there is a chance the aft section of Ship 27 may find new life as a component of this test tank, but only time can tell whether we are right. Upon completion of this tank, I anticipate it will undergo testing at the Can Crusher at Massey's test facility. Of course, ships aren't the only vehicles being assembled at the construction site. We also have the mega bays for the boosters. It might seem like, given the long time since the completion of the first mega bay, this building wouldn't receive further modifications. However, that is not the case. Recent days have seen welding sparks illuminating the top of Mega Bay 1. Although this section is largely obscured from the public's view, making it difficult to figure out what is being done there. It's plausible that SpaceX is preparing Mega Bay 1 to house boosters equipped with the hot staging ring. Furthermore, the installation of glass windows atop the structure is nearing completion, as evidenced by the gradually disappearing scaffolding. There's also been some activity noted at the second Mega Bay. The first segment of its 5th level arrived on July 23rd, followed by the second section 3 days later. With the LR-11000 crane ready for stacking operations, it's possible that, as you watch this, both sections are already in place. Can you believe that the first beam of this building was hoisted on May 19th? Merely 2 months have passed since, and we're already at the cusp of finishing the construction. This is some next level rapid progress. On July 25th, we also noticed the beginnings of another phase of an important project: the expansion of the Starfactory. We've previously discussed this structure several times on why, but given its current status, it seems like a good moment to dive into what it can be actually used for. Official sources have offered limited information, apart from the building design itself. However, based on the renders and its counterpart at Florida's Roberts Road, we can make some educated guesses. First, let's ask ourselves, what is the original Starfactory used for? The initial construction phase of this building, dubbed Phase 1, was first used in the 3rd quarter of 2022. Presently, it's employed for the creation of Starship components. Inside, workers weld ring sections together and sleeve various domes to create Starship building blocks. These tasks were previously performed out in the open. We now find ourselves at the beginning of Starfactory's Phase 2, which could potentially serve for post-processing of sections. SpaceX has chosen to excavate a press pit, laying the foundation for heavy-duty machinery. This strategic move could enable them to fabricate elements like stringers directly on site from metal sheets, eliminating the necessity to deliver them from remote locations. We might also witness a portion of this facility being allocated for CNC machining. Equipment like mills, plasma cutters, and water jets could be used here to manufacture specialized Starship parts. Currently, Maximum Industries is responsible for creating some of these CNC machined components. However, I envision a future where SpaceX fabricates these elements on site, cutting costs and saving time. In the subsequent expansion phase, the building will extend up to Highway 4. Once the production tents are eventually dismantled, the final phase will end in a massive interconnected facility. Thanks to some official renders and pictures from Greg Scott, we can deduce that a segment of this facility will feature an elevated ceiling. Here, SpaceX will carry out the assembly, welding, and tile addition to the nose cones. Tasks already being done in one of the production tents. Unfortunately, the glass front you see featured in these renders might not happen after all. It would add a lot of complexity without being actually useful, so sadly there might not be any peeking in sight for us. Finally, a portion of the Starfactory might also be allocated for storage purposes. Although the ring yard provides valuable insight into the Starship production process, the parts' exposure to the elements could be problematic in the future. Hence, I anticipate that once the Starfactory reaches completion, the ring yard will either shrink or disappear altogether. That's our idea for the Starfactory. How much of it proves accurate, we'll find out in the coming months. Now let's briefly turn our attention to the rocket garden. Here, only a few days ago, the Ship 27 prototype was dismantled. While opinions were split regarding this prototype's scrapping, I trust that we can all hope that such a fate is not repeated for another prototype. Following the unfortunate demise of Ship 27, the crane at Rocket Garden has been hooked up to the SN15 prototype. While I don't like to predict a pessimistic future, the fate of the first ever Starship to land successfully seems uncertain at best. Specifically, this prototype holds sentimental values for many of us, as it demonstrated SpaceX's ability to land with such a colossal vehicle. This was also the much anticipated green light needed to start the next generation of prototypes. However, hope dies last. On the night following the attachment of serial number 15 to the crane, workers were spotted dousing water around the ship's nose cone. Perhaps after enduring months of pressurization, this prototype developed a leak that requires fixing. Fingers crossed that this is only some maintenance work and that our serial number 15 will remain intact. Adjacent to the prototypes, a new concrete pad has been poured. Its intended purpose, though, remains an enigma. Perhaps it will serve as a permanent display stand, explaining why serial number 15 is connected to a crane. We'll have to wait patiently to find out. Unfortunately, during the editing of this episode, the unthinkable happened. On July 26th, the SN15 prototype was marked and later workers cut it up into pieces. The time frame here with the disassembly of Ship 27 and serial number 15 just days apart makes me wonder if serial number 15 also suffered a loss of pressure, which would cause internal damage. On the other hand, just because this prototype was important to us doesn't mean that it was for SpaceX. Yes, it was the first one to survive the landing, but in the following years we'll see many such firsts. The first prototype to survive re-entry, the first successful landing after reaching an orbit, the first successful catch, and the list goes on. If SpaceX really does reach the scale predicted by Elon Musk, one ship becomes insignificant in the hundreds, if not thousands of rockets yet to come. Farewell SN15, you served us well. Lastly, we have to visit a place that we don't visit too often. I'm talking, of course, about the payload processing facility. Currently, this building is solely dedicated to Starlink storage. Photos from Chief show just how many V2 satellites are already waiting there, ready to be launched. Due to their size, it's impossible to send them aboard Falcon 9, which is why it has its own dedicated mini version of the V2 satellites. On July 24th, a bridge crane was installed in this facility, implying that SpaceX is getting serious about sending V2 Starlinks to orbit. When do you think we'll see that first Starship Starlink launch? Will it happen this year, or maybe we have to wait longer than that? Let me know in the comments. I read all of them, and while you're at it, smash that like button, subscribe, share this video with your family and friends, and consider becoming a wise supporter. For just $1 per month, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries from Chief, over 100 high-quality photos every single day, and countless other extras on top. No matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. The link to our Patreon page is in the description. Thanks to the thousands who already support us, and we just passed 1,000 patrons. You rock! That was a long Starship segment, but this isn't the only rocket owned by SpaceX. Another one, FALCON Heavy, has encountered a hiccup on its way to orbit. As the clock struck 11 p.m. on July 26th, a FALCON Heavy shouldering EchoStar 24, the heaviest geostationary satellite ever, was supposed to ignite its engines and take flight from the iconic LC-39A at Kennedy Space Center. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Instead, the launch was scrubbed just a minute and 5 seconds before the ignition. No reason was given besides a board criteria violation, which could mean a plethora of things. It's always a bit disappointing to see a scrubbed launch, especially if you have to wake up in the middle of the night to see it, which I suppose many of you did. But that's why missions have a countdown in the first place. Everything has to go flawlessly, or you're risking a launch failure that could hold up all other launches for weeks, if not months. As of the recording of this episode, the new liftoff date is July 27th, so there is a high probability that as you're watching this, FALCON Heavy has already launched. Nonetheless, did you know that the flight profile of this mission has changed? No? Then check this out. Initially, SpaceX planned to put on a show, wanting to attempt a double remote drone ship landing, which would be an awe-inspiring sight to say the least. But plans change, and between the permit release and the launch, a decision was made to switch gears and perform a double return to launch site maneuver. This switch, however, isn't a downgrade, quite the opposite actually. Although deploying 2 remote drone ships would be a sight to behold, it also comes with a hefty price tag and logistical hurdles. It takes time and ties up both barges for several days, not the most efficient move when you've got rockets heading to the skies daily. An RTLS maneuver, on the other hand, accelerates the process. With this option, SpaceX can skip the step of recovering the booster from the port, saving precious time. This launch should mark the 3rd successful touchdown for booster B1064, the 4th for B1065, and the 1st for B1079, but also the last, as it will end up taking a dip in the ocean. That, of course, is intentional. The core of this FALCON Heavy is expendable due to the mass constraints. While SpaceX keeps reaching new heights, the Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO for short, is also aiming for a big win. July 14th marked the launch of the Chandrayaan-3 mission from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. Since then, this daring moon mission has done a series of 5 maneuvers to increase its altitude. Currently, Chandrayaan-3 is making its last orbit around Earth. On August 1st, it will use its onboard thrusters to take a critical step called the Translunar Injection, or TLI. This move will change the spacecraft's course from circling Earth to orbiting the Moon. Once there, it will do more burns, this time in reverse, in order to get closer to the Moon. If all goes as planned, the lander will separate from the propulsion module on August 23rd and try to land on the Moon with a small rover on board. ISRO last tried to do something similar in September 2019, but lost all communications just 2 kilometers above the surface. It turned out that a problem with the braking thruster caused the lander to veer off course, ending the mission in failure. But now, with that experience under their belt, the odds of successfully landing are much higher. Once the lander is on the silver globe, ISRO has 2 additional main goals: deploy and test out the rover and conduct onboard experiments. The whole mission should last between 3 and 6 months. What do you think? Will ISRO make it this time, or will they crash into the Moon's surface again? I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, make it burn, subscribe for more awesome content. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite space nerd store. Link is in the description. And if you want to get even smarter about space and rockets, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. Anjododo. Yes. Anonymous. No. Oh, come on.